of Whitetail TV.
As an outdoor writer and a part-time TV host, I'm fortunate enough I get to hunt some of the coolest, the best deer hunting states in America. But one that always ranks right at the top of the list, it's Montana, big sky country.
Hey, I'm a whitetail geek, there's no question about that. But if you really want to experience a thrill, expand your opportunities and head west. I did it for the first time in Montana and man, was it awesome.
The whole terrain changes. And then as you get farther west, you run into an even cooler transition. And that's the transition from whitetails to mule deer.
The deer are just different. Whitetails are whitetails no matter where you're at. The behaviors are very similar. But when you throw in a mix like mule deer, it just makes it so much more interesting.
What I've seen most often is that the whitetails are going to be hanging down in the river bottoms, maybe going out into agriculture areas, while the mule deer are going to be more in those foothills and all those little hidey holes in the foothills, and they're going to come out maybe to those same agricultural fields. But that's not to say you won't see some overlapping.
So yeah, I kind of got a love affair with Montana, and you don't have to twist my arm when I get an invite to go deer hunting in that beautiful big country up north of my home.
It's a totally different world out there. You know, if you're a tree stand hunter like I've been my entire life, it really takes something to get used to that you're not going to go out to the same stand or the same area and sit there for 10 hours a day. You have to be ready to be mobile. You got to get down, put some boot leather on the ground, and really explore the country.
Part of the really adventure of going out west is experiencing not only hunting mule deer or whitetails out there, it's the terrain, it's the habitat that they occupy, and facing those new challenges of hunting them in different habitats.
I just wrapped up a hunt in Nebraska. I threw all my gear in the truck and drove into the night to get to eastern Montana. We were going to focus our efforts on mule deer in the morning and whitetails in the afternoon. The mule deer, they'll roam on and off all day long. But the whitetails, to get into where they were at, you'd probably blow them out of the fields in the morning in the dark. So it was better to let them retire back into the river bottom and hit them in the evening.
Land of Whitetail is brought to you by Cuddyback Digital, more deer, fewer blanks. By Sig Sauer Electro Optics, never settle. By Thompson Center, America's master gunmaker. Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable. And by Scent Killer Gold with Hunt Dry Plus technology. Apply it, dry it, and go hunt. Coming up on Land of Whitetail.
You know, eastern Montana, it's big country. We could be hunting huge, vast grasslands. We could be hunting ponderosa pine forests. We could be hunting big gumbo breaks. And the cool thing about the property is it had a little bit of everything.
Mark Kaiser is on one of his favorite playgrounds, Montana.
Now this was simply going to be a hunt for fun. Connor, he does a lot of guiding in between his fun hunting, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm trying to get television done.
Actually only lives a few hours from me down in Wyoming, and so we kind of hunt a lot of the same ways, same tactics, and been talking over the last couple of years trying to line up a hunt together. And
finally put a time period, 4-day time period, a short hunt right before Thanksgiving.
And the peak of the rut was about 3 to 4 days before Mark got in. I've been guiding, so I've really been able to keep track of kind of what the mule deer are doing, the activity.
And when that time rolled around, I'd been bow hunting for weeks. I slipped in a muzzleloader hunt here, but I was ready to get that speed bow in my hand and maybe use some of that Hornady ammo to put a nice buck down. We put a plan together. It was a basic plan, but a good plan, a great strategy for hunting 2 different species of deer. We were going to focus our efforts on mule deer in the morning and whitetails in the afternoon. The mule deer, they'll roam on and off all day long. But the whitetails, to get into where they were at, you'd probably blow them out of the fields in the morning in the dark. So it was better to let them retire back into the river bottoms and hit them in the evenings. I thought it was a strategy that I could live with. Mule deer in the morning and whitetail in the afternoon, hey, that's heaven to me.
Right off the bat, early in the morning, first day, we run into a nice mule deer rutting some does. He was an old buck. He just didn't quite have the forks of what we were looking for. Had the width and the mass and the height, but just looking for something a little better.
Connor, that was one wide mule deer buck. He's a little weak in all the other departments, but he's got mass. He's just super wide. I mean, he's right about what we're looking for. Maybe just a little bit bigger in the fork department.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. I'm hunting today in Montana with Connor Brown of Truly Montana Outdoors. This morning it's mule deer. This afternoon it might be whitetail. And that's the beauty of Montana, isn't it, Connor?
Oh, absolutely. You got a great shot at quality bucks either way.
And you've got a cow elk tag in your pocket, so we may even try to get an elk in the truck before the day is out.
I do. We got tags and we're ready to fill them.
Well, let's go take another look at some of these other deer you got around, all right?
Sounds good.
The first morning, I didn't have any clue where we were going. You know, eastern Montana, it's big country. We could be hunting huge, vast grasslands. We could be hunting ponderosa pine forests. We could be hunting big gumbo breaks. And the cool thing about the property when the sun came up is it had a little bit of everything.
I've got one mule deer property that I've been lucky to attain, that I'm managing the ranch, and I've been managing genetics out there. We're able to take a couple trophy deer off of it a year, but right now there's a lot of old deer out there, and we like to get them out of the pool and kind of give those younger up-and-comers a chance. Also, friends of mine and I are in on a lease down on some river bottom for whitetails, right there on the Yellowstone River, and really that's all you need. Low hunting pressure, got a little bit of pressure on each side. We keep the deer moving back and forth, and it's just a phenomenal place to go for an evening sit if we're not finding what we need in the morning for the mule deer.
Most hunters, they've got a good pair of binoculars. That's kind of their goal in life, is to spend some money, like on my Nikon Monarchs here. But what I see time and time again is these guys not putting them to good use. And you need to get up on these high spots, and you really can save yourself a lot of hiking time by just glassing. But you can't just sit and glass for like 3 seconds, you know. But it's all about putting minutes and even hours behind your glass to find these big country bucks like this. Now, Connor and I had been talking about the rut and where it was at this point of the month. We figured the rut was winding down. The deer, the big bucks, were pretty much done. Most of the does were bred. We had to catch that one big buck roaming around.
So that evening we focused on whitetails.
We were going to the Yellowstone River. I had never hunted the Yellowstone yet in Montana. Connor showed us these great fields, and what else did we find? Well, an over-enthusiastic farmer doing some farming. He's on the field we want to hunt tonight, so we've had to move over one field. Now the hope is that his activity over there is going to make these deer come into this area. We weren't set up for this area. There's a ground blind over there. There isn't here. So I'm setting up my shooting area right now. So we knew we had to work around that tractor in the field right next to where we were hunting. But that's part of hunting. You kind of just have to deal with things. Hey, all plans, they're great, but they always don't work. So have a backup plan in mind.
Mark was able to see a lot of whitetails, but it just wasn't the whitetail for that night.
One buck stood out, a nice 6x4 whitetail. He wasn't an old buck, but he had good points, and I definitely put him on the hit list. It was the first day I was shopping. Who doesn't love to shop?
This segment of Land of Whitetail is brought to you by Matthews.
Mark Kaiser has a plan for this 4-day hunt in Montana. Mule deer in the mornings and whitetails in the evenings. It's a pretty good plan by any deer hunter's standards.
Next morning, game plan, same thing. We were gonna buzz through the ranch, do a little bit of driving, do a lot of hiking, and look at as many deer as we could.
right at first light, of course, we're seeing does. Finally run into another buck. Well, lo and behold, it's another 3.5-year-old up-and-comer.
He had a doe with him, and it looked like he might be a shooter. But as we looked through the Nikons, not quite, again, what we wanted. This buck had it all, except he just needed another year or two to top out. So instead of shooting that young buck, we backed out. We didn't need to shoot that young deer. He needed to grow up, and we needed to head to whitetail country. Well, we've had this discussion about the best laid plan, the great planning for your deer hunt. It doesn't always work out. Now, we were in this whitetail spot yesterday. They were farming in here. They left a tractor behind, and after last night passing up on a pretty good buck, seeing some other action, Connor saw the big buck on this field behind me, right where this tractor was parked. That was my plan. Get up high on the tractor, sit there, have a sniper perch, great surveillance area, and be able to cover both these green fields out in front of me. This tractor, it's gone. This farmer, he's over enthusiastic. But there's a dike here, and that's what I'm gonna use now. This high bank has given me a nice platform to shoot from. Now all we gotta do is wait for the deer to come out. Sunset, deer started trickling out of the woods. And then behind me, I saw the buck from the night before. That 6x4. He was tempting me. He was cruising around the field. But I still had this inkling a bigger buck was gonna come out. The sun set, shooting light disappeared, no big bucks came out. Heading back to the mule deer spot, we decided that we were gonna hunt it hard. Go into some other basins where Connor had seen some of these doe groups. Thanksgiving was coming up. We had to make something happen. That morning, we got on another nice 4x4 buck. That buck, just a year again away from being a good buck and 2 years away from being a jumbo. So we looked at him, just gave him a thumbs up and drove on. We headed into another spot. As we side hilled around this steep little mesa, there was the white rump of a mule deer. And that mule deer had a rack. We were into day 3 of a 4-day hunt. We nodded and said, let's do this. We rounded the corner of this basin, peeked in over the top, Connor looking one way, I was looking down to the side. No sighting of him. Yeah, he could be in these thick cedars here, but boy, he would have had a haul to get out of here and not up that saddle.
We got the wind perfect, so I know you haven't smelled this yet.
I think he's in here. Let's why don't you go up on top of that ridge? I'm just gonna post up here. He may just be held up right here and come out, so.
See if we can kick him out of there.
And if nothing else, after I see you go over the top, I'm just gonna cut to that saddle. Let's meet there. We'll make a plan from there, right? Connor headed up the ridge. I was laying down there in a prone position. I could cover that whole basin shooting off my bipod. And I felt confident with my 300 Win Mag that no buck, if he showed up, was going to escape.
Well, lo and behold, we jump him out. As he's running across there, the guide in me wanted to bark at him to get him to stop.
But when he come out and blowed into that sunlight, hey, I did what any smart hunter would do. I howled like a coyote. Hit him? Yep, I hit him. You hit him. My Montana hunt had come to a quick end, but a great ending. We had a buck down. Put her there again.
Hey, great shot.
Look at that. Whew. He's wide, heavy. Older deer, look at that face on him. But if we couldn't get a big one, We're gonna try to shoot a management older deer. Yeah, that's what you call a heart shot. That ELDX horny bullet just hammered him. And we had what you would call a Montana super hunt.
Coming up, some tips for your crossbow and growing big with Steve Bartilla. Growing big with Steve Bartilla.
Habitat improvement is a labor of love, but make no mistake about it, it is a labor. Unless we want to hire this type of stuff out, we got to get out in the woods and we got to do some work. Now, what I'm going to caution you on right now is remember two things. A, this is supposed to be fun. If it's not fun, go find a hobby you actually enjoy. Now, this is too much work to not enjoy it. Next, many of the things we do out here, there's a danger factor involved. I just got done creating a doe bedding area. There's a reason that every time I talk about hinge cutting, I suggest that you have professionals come in and do it. Frankly, it's because I don't want the liability if something goes wrong. So I spent about 2 hours working on a blockade and working on this doe bedding area. Now you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go move some cameras. I've got a couple of water sources that I'm going to put in. You go ahead and break things up so that once you start getting tired, that's when accidents happen, so stop. As a side note, what we're doing here is we're manufacturing a very high odds, low impact stand. You're hearing a vehicle go by in the background right now. The reason? We're less than 100 yards off the road. Now, that is a key. Manufacture those low impact stands. They don't happen by accident. We've got a road 100 yards over that way, so got a doe bedding area here, got a tree picked out over there, 100 yards off the road we're in. Nothing has any idea we're even hunting them. Don't get so caught up in I gotta get this done. As I said, I've got a couple hours worth of work left here to do. I'm not gonna finish right now because you know what, I'm getting tired. So take a break. Always remember, we're only talking deer, people. For as much as we love deer and deer hunting, it's not worth risking serious injury. That's why I always recommend you have professionals do this work for you rather than do it yourself, frankly, because I don't want the liability. Okay. That said, when you are out there working, you start to get tired, stop. We have 8,000 different projects that we can do to our habitat and go do something else for a couple hours. You know what? That chainsaw work is going to still be there. So by following all the safety rules and by doing something else once we start running down, we end up coming home safe. And you know what? Our loved ones appreciate that.
Growing big with Steve Bartilla.
You know, we brought you a lot of videos last year on crossbows and crossbow hunting. One of them that I found fascinating because it taught me something that I never knew is you don't wax the serving on your crossbow when you're waxing the string. Jake, I have to ask you this because there's a lot of information out there and a lot of different advice. How often or how many shots should I be taking before I wax that string?
Right, and Dan, that's a great question because there's a lot of different information out there. What we typically recommend is that you do it every time you take that crossbow out and shoot it. You've taken it outside, exposed it to the elements, whether it's just dust on the wind, could be rainy, moisture in the air. Waxing your string, you're never going to be able to do it too much.
So you can't over wax your string. And like I said, we taught people, including myself, is that when you wax that center serving, that's going to mess you up, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, and one of the big issues that people have is they actually convert and use Vaseline instead of using either rail lube or string wax. And they do the same thing when they're on the serving. So you cock that bow and it's got that substance on it. When you bring it back into the trigger mechanism, it actually collects dirt and dust and gums up the trigger so that your crossbow won't fire anymore. And you always want to use some kind of oil lubricant to lube the rail and string wax on your strings. We have some that actually ship with all of our crossbows.
Little tube right there, isn't it?
You're ready to go right from the package. When you run out of this thing, we always recommend scorpion venom. Scorpion venom is a great purchase option. You can go to basically any retail store and pick that up, and it'll last you for a long time, and it does the exact same stuff.
So what I want to do with that is basically get the rails,
yeah,
and the string, but not directly on that serving.
Right. Yep.
And I can't overdo it.
No, with string wax, no. With rail lube, you don't want to put too much. We always recommend putting 2 drops on either side of the rail and using your finger just to spread it out. If you run out and it looks like you're not going to have enough to spread, add 2 more dots halfway down the barrel and bring it all the way back up underneath your retention spring or retention brush, right back to the trigger box, and you'll be all ready to
Little
go.
goes a long way.
Little does go a long way, especially with oil.
That's awesome. That's great information that you need to know when you're shooting a crossbow. Remember, Vaseline is not a substitute. Don't use it on your crossbow. For more information on crossbow hunting and crossbows in general, go to 10pointcrossbows.com.
Land of Whitetail is brought to you by Cuddyback Digital, more deer, fewer blanks. By Sig Sauer Electro Optics, never settle. By Thompson Center, America's master gunmaker. Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable. And by Scent Killer Gold with Hunt Dry Plus technology. Apply it, dry it, and go hunt.